Imagine being given the title. Imagine being given the rank, the access, the official stamp of approval from the most powerful woman in the country. Imagine standing in a room full of the most spectacular jewelry in the world. Jewelry worth hundreds of millions of pounds. Jewelry that has been worn by queens and empresses for 200 years. And imagine being told you can have almost all of it. Almost. Because there is one necklace in that room, one specific necklace, sitting in its box, waiting. A necklace so deeply rooted in the history of the British royal family that wearing it means something. It says something. It is not just jewelry. It is a statement. And that necklace has your name written all over it. By every rule, by every tradition, by every logic of royal hierarchy, it should be yours. But it is not. It was never offered to you. Not once. Not in 12 years of state banquets and diplomatic receptions and formal galas where you sat in the second highest seat in the entire kingdom. And then, one evening in July 2017, at a glittering state banquet at Buckingham Palace, the doors open, and a young woman walks in wearing it. Not you. Not the woman with the rank and the title and the official position. Kate. This is the story of the Greville ruby necklace. And when you understand what this necklace is, where it came from, who owned it, and how it ended up on Kate's neck instead of Camilla's, I think you will understand something very important about what Elizabeth was doing in the final years of her reign, and why it was the ultimate insult. To understand why this necklace is so significant, to understand why Elizabeth giving it to Kate instead of Camilla is such a powerful statement, you first need to understand where it came from. We go back to the very beginning of the 20th century, to a world of grand country houses and royal hunting parties and glittering dinner tables where the most powerful people in Britain gathered to eat and drink and whisper about each other. In the middle of all of that was one woman. A woman who was not born royal, a woman who was not born aristocratic, a woman who was, in fact, the illegitimate daughter of a Scottish brewery owner. Her name was Maggie Anderson, and she became Dame Margaret Greville. Maggie married the Honourable Ronald Greville in 1891 and immediately used her new position and her enormous inherited wealth to plant herself at the very centre of British society. She was sharp. She was funny. She spoke 6 languages. She was described as one of the best-dressed women in society, and she had an extraordinary ability to make powerful people feel comfortable around her. King Edward VII became a close friend, then King George V and Queen Mary. And when the Duke of York, the future King George VI, married the young Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon in 1923, Maggie adored the new royal couple so much that she lent them her magnificent country estate, Polesden Lacey, for their honeymoon. She called Elizabeth the daughter she never had. And when Maggie passed away in 1942, she left the most spectacular private jewellery collection in Britain entirely to that daughter, to Queen Elizabeth, who would later become the Queen Mother. The collection was staggering. Tiaras, necklaces, earrings, brooches, pieces made by Cartier, by Boucheron, by all the greatest jewellery houses in the world. Pieces worth, even in 1942 money, an almost unimaginable amount. The Queen Mother was deeply moved. She wrote to her own mother-in-law, Queen Mary, saying that Maggie had left the jewels to her with her loving thoughts and that she felt very touched. And among all those treasures, among all the tiaras and the diamond suites and the emeralds, there was one particular piece, a ruby necklace. A romantic, extraordinary, deeply significant piece of jewellery that would travel through 3 more generations of royal women before it finally landed, in the most dramatic possible way, on the neck of Kate Middleton. Let me tell you what this necklace actually looks like, because you need to see it in your mind to understand why it matters so much. The Greville ruby necklace was made in Paris by Boucheron, one of the most prestigious jewellery houses in the world, in 1907. It was made for Maggie Greville herself, and it is, in a word, extraordinary. The necklace has a distinctive V-shaped form. It sweeps down from the shoulders in 2 graceful diagonal lines, meeting at the center in a large, breathtaking pendant drop. The design is covered in repeating flower motifs, romantic, swirling, almost impossibly delicate patterns set in silver and gold. And throughout all of it, blazing deep red against the white diamonds, are rubies. Rich, vivid, blood-red rubies that catch the light at every angle. It is the kind of necklace that makes a room go quiet when someone walks in wearing it. Now, unlike many of the pieces in Maggie's collection, which she had reworked and redesigned over the years to keep them modern, this necklace was left exactly as it was. No alterations, no updates. When she passed away and left it to the Queen Mother, it arrived in its original 1907 form. The Queen Mother received it in 1942, but here is a fascinating detail. Despite loving the Greville jewels deeply and wearing many of them throughout her long life, the Queen Mother apparently never wore this necklace. Not once. It went directly into a box and was put away. And 5 years later, in November 1947, she gave it away. Her daughter, the young Princess Elizabeth, was getting married to Prince Philip. The Queen Mother chose the Greville ruby necklace as her personal wedding gift to her daughter. Think about what that means. She did not wear it once herself. She went straight from receiving it to saving it for the most important moment she could think of her daughter's wedding. It was a gift of extraordinary significance, not just financially, emotionally. This was a piece that had belonged to one of the most remarkable women of the Edwardian age. A woman who had been like a mother to the Queen Mother herself, and now it was being passed to the next generation, to the woman who would one day be queen. Princess Elizabeth received it in 1947 and immediately made it her own. In the early years of her marriage, she wore it often. There is a formal portrait from around 1951 breathtaking, where she wears the necklace with the Nizam of Hyderabad tiara and the Bahrain pearl drop earrings. She is young, she is radiant, and the rubies blaze against her evening gown like she was born to wear them. She wore it again for a film premiere in London in September 1951. She wore it for a formal portrait in 1987, now as Queen, pairing it with the King George IV diamond diadem and ruby cluster earrings. And she wore it most recently in April 2018, at the Commonwealth Heads of Government dinner at Buckingham Palace. White evening gown, Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, the ruby necklace blazing at her throat. For 70 years, the Greville ruby necklace was Elizabeth's, part of her personal collection, part of her story, part of who she was. And Camilla never touched it, not once, in all those years. Now here is where the story becomes very complicated and very interesting. When Camilla married Charles in 2005, Elizabeth opened the Greville collection to her, and she was generous. She gave Camilla access to some of the most spectacular pieces in the entire bequest. The Greville honeycomb tiara, enormous, imposing, a cascade of diamonds that demands attention the moment it enters a room. Camilla made it her signature. It became the tiara the world most associated with her. The Greville festoon necklace, the Greville tiara, the Greville ivy leaf clips that had been personal favorites of Elizabeth herself. To the outside world, it looked like Elizabeth had handed Camilla everything. She had opened the vault. She had shared the inheritance. But she had not given her the ruby necklace. Think about this carefully. Camilla is wearing the Greville pieces. She is at Buckingham Palace state banquets in the Greville tiara. She is at formal royal events in the Greville festoon necklace. She has, by every outward appearance, full access to the collection. But the ruby necklace, the piece that Elizabeth received as a wedding gift from her own mother, the piece that Maggie Greville herself had created in Paris in 1907, the piece that had been part of Elizabeth's personal jewelry box since 1947 was never offered to Camilla. Not for a state banquet, not for a diplomatic reception, not for any of the dozens of formal occasions over 12 years where it would have been perfectly appropriate, perfectly expected, perfectly normal for Camilla to wear it. Elizabeth kept it back. And here is the critical thing. Elizabeth was not careless about her jewelry. She did not forget about pieces. She knew exactly where every single item was at all times. She knew its history, its value, its meaning, its appropriateness for every occasion. The fact that the Greville ruby necklace was never offered to Camilla was not an oversight. It was not a coincidence. It was a choice, a deliberate, sustained, 12-year choice. Elizabeth had other ideas for this necklace. She was waiting for the right moment and the right person. It is the 12th of July, 2017. Buckingham Palace, a state banquet in honor of King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia of Spain. One of the most formal, most watched, most photographed events in the royal calendar. The kind of evening where every choice, every tiara, every necklace, every jewel is noticed, analyzed, and discussed. The doors of the ballroom open. Kate walks in. She is wearing Queen Mary's lover's knot, tiara Diana's tiara, the one she had made famous, the one the world loves, on Kate. She is wearing Diana's Collingwood pearl drop earrings, another deeply sentimental piece. And around her neck, blazing red and white under the chandeliers of Buckingham Palace, is the Greville ruby necklace. The necklace Elizabeth received as a wedding gift from the Queen Mother in 1947. The necklace Maggie Greville had made in Paris in 1907. The necklace that had been locked away from Camilla for 12 straight years, on Kate, at the most formal state occasion of the year, paired with Diana's tiara and Diana's earrings. Let me say that again slowly because I want you to feel the full weight of it. Kate walked into a state banquet at Buckingham Palace wearing Diana's tiara, Diana's earrings, and the Greville ruby necklace. 3 of the most emotionally loaded pieces of jewelry in the entire royal collection, all on one woman, all on the same evening. This was not an accident. Elizabeth did not dress people by accident, not at state banquets, not in front of foreign monarchs and the world's press. Every single choice that evening was deliberate, and the message was devastatingly clear. Camilla had spent 12 years at every major royal event Elizabeth could have offered this necklace to her. 12 years. And Elizabeth had chosen tonight, this banquet, this woman, this combination of Diana's pieces and the Greville ruby. She was drawing a direct, unbroken line from Diana to Kate, from the Princess of Wales who the world had loved and lost, to the Princess of Wales who was now carrying that legacy forward. And Camilla, the woman who had the rank, the title, the crown, eventually was nowhere in that picture. I have to stop here because I genuinely want to know what you think. Kate walked in wearing Diana's tiara, Diana's earrings, and the ruby necklace that Camilla had never been allowed to touch. Was that a message? Or am I reading too much into it? Comment below. This is exactly the kind of thing I want to talk about with you. Let me explain to you exactly why this was the ultimate insult. It was not just that Kate wore the necklace instead of Camilla. That alone would have been significant. But it is the combination of everything together that makes this moment so extraordinary. The Greville ruby necklace is not just any piece from the collection. It is one of the pieces that connects directly to the Queen Mother, the woman whose legacy defined the royal family for most of the 20th century. The woman Camilla has spent years trying to follow in the footsteps of. The woman whose style and grace and public warmth Camilla has deliberately tried to echo. Camilla had access to the Greville collection. She wore the Greville tiara. She wore the Greville festoon necklace. She was, in many ways, publicly positioned as the heir to the Queen Mother's role in the family. And yet the piece that connects most directly to the Queen Mother's personal act of love, the necklace that the Queen Mother chose specifically to give to her daughter as a wedding gift, was never offered to Camilla. It went to Kate. And it went to Kate on the very same evening she was wearing Diana's tiara, which means Elizabeth was making 2 statements at once. First, the Greville legacy, the Queen Mother's legacy, belongs to Kate, not Camilla. Second, Diana's legacy, the Princess of Wales legacy, belongs to Kate, not Camilla. By combining those 3 pieces on one woman on one evening, Elizabeth was doing something she would never say out loud. She was telling the world, anyone who knew enough to understand the language she was speaking, exactly who she believed the true heir to the Windsor women's legacy was. And it was not the woman sitting in the second highest seat in the kingdom. It was the woman who would one day sit in the highest. Now, here is a detail that makes this story even more extraordinary. And it is something that almost nobody talks about. After Kate wore the Greville ruby necklace at the Spanish state banquet in July 2017, Elizabeth took it back. Most of the time when Elizabeth loaned a piece of jewelry to Kate, it was a longer-term arrangement. The Edinburgh wedding bracelet, the Bahrain pearl earrings, those were loaned and kept, worn again and again over the years. But the Greville ruby necklace went back into Elizabeth's personal jewelry box. And in April 2018, 9 months after Kate had worn it, Elizabeth wore it herself at the Commonwealth Heads of Government dinner at Buckingham Palace, the necklace blazing at her throat one more time. What does that tell you? It tells you that Elizabeth was not ready to let go of this one. Not yet. It tells you that the Greville ruby necklace meant something uniquely personal to her. That she had shared it with Kate for a specific purpose on a specific evening, and then she had taken it back because it was still hers. It was still part of her story. And Camilla? In the months between Kate wearing it and Elizabeth wearing it again, nothing. No offer, no loan, no mention. That necklace went from Kate to Elizabeth and back again. And Camilla was never part of that conversation. That is the ultimate insult. Not a dramatic confrontation, not a public announcement, just a quiet, steady, sustained exclusion from the piece that mattered most. And this was not a one-off decision. This was part of a pattern that Elizabeth built over many years. She gave Camilla the Greville honeycomb tiara grand, imposing, perfect for a duchess stepping into a public role, the ceremonial uniform of a senior royal. But the Greville ruby necklace, the piece tied directly to the Queen Mother's love for her daughter, the piece that had been Elizabeth's wedding gift from her own mother, the piece that carried the deepest personal meaning in the entire collection, that went to Kate. Just like the Edinburgh wedding bracelet, Philip's most intimate gift, Kate. Just like the Bahrain pearl earrings, the earrings of a young queen stepping onto the world stage for the first time, Kate. Just like the Cambridge pearl brooch, the brooch Elizabeth wore in 5 of her own Christmas broadcasts, in the last months of her life, Kate. Do you see what Elizabeth was doing? She was dividing her collection into 2 categories, the official jewels for Camilla, for the public role, for the woman who held the rank, and the personal jewels, the ones that told the real story of who this family was and who its future belonged to. Those were for Kate, only for Kate, always for Kate. In 1907, a Paris jeweler created a ruby necklace for one of the most extraordinary women in British society. In 1942, that necklace was bequeathed to a queen who was like a daughter to her. In 1947, it was given with love from that queen to her own daughter on her wedding day. For 70 years, it lived in Elizabeth's private collection, worn at her most important moments, kept close, kept personal, kept away from the woman who should have had it by rank, but never had it by love. And then, on one evening in July 2017, Elizabeth opened the box. Not for the woman with the title, for the woman with Diana's tiara on her head and Diana's earrings in her ears. For Kate. Camilla has the crown today. She sits beside the king. She wears the Greville honeycomb tiara that the whole world recognizes. But the ruby necklace, the one with the Queen Mother's fingerprints all over it, the one Elizabeth received on her wedding day, the one Camilla was never once offered in 12 years. That is Kate's. And Elizabeth made absolutely sure that anyone who understands the language of royal jewelry knows exactly what she meant. If that story gave you chills, if you felt what I felt when I first pieced together the full timeline of this necklace, then you are exactly the kind of person this channel is built for. Subscribe. Because we are just getting started uncovering the stories Elizabeth left behind, and I promise you, the next one is even more extraordinary than this.